Resume. Okay. Well, welcome back, friends. And I'm going to pull this together here. We are doing Enhancing Disciplinary Literacy, AI's Role in Humanities Education. So welcome back. I have two familiar faces, or actually one familiar face and one happy name that we have with us. And I'm so glad you're here, both of you, because that means that we're going to continue and build on the learning that we had last week, which is awesome. Let me just get started here. I'm just going to make sure that my screen is actually where it needs to be. You know how when you do virtual learning, like you have to have everything in the right place so you can make magic happen. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do now with like 3 screens. Okay, so welcome. And today we're really just going to explore how AI can support creative communication in humanities and classrooms. And like we mentioned last week, when we say humanities, that is just one big umbrella topic. We know that. So I'm going to just keep moving us on here. Let me see. Next slide. So I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land in which I live and I work, and I'm in Novi, Michigan. And this area is a traditional, ancestral, and contemporary land of the Anishinaabe peoples, including the Ottawa, Ojibwa, and the Potawatomi nations, who are part of the Three Fires Confederacy. We also want to acknowledge that that Michigan's 12 federally recognized Native nations, the historic indigenous communities of this region, and indigenous individuals and communities who live here now. In offering this acknowledgement, we honor the resilience, history, and the contributions of indigenous peoples, and we affirm their sovereignty, their presence, and connection to this land, past, present, and future. So, friends, if you feel comfortable, please share in the chat where you are joining us from today so we can also recognize and honor the diverse lands that bring us together. Okay, welcome, welcome. Thank you for acknowledging that. And just like last week, friends, I'm going to move my screen a little bit over here. Yes. And just like last week, I'm going to introduce myself again. For those who are watching this recording, my name is Myla Lee. I'm an educator of over 30 plus years. I officially kind of retired, but I don't feel like I'm retired from district work after in 2020. We know what happened during that time. That was at 30 something years, 31 years. And then after that, I continued on. So this would have been my 35th. I really don't feel like I ever took a break because I think my own kids have said, I think, Mom, you were born a teacher. You know, I tried everything else, tried to acknowledge the fact that I would never be a teacher, but I ended up being a teacher. And so once it's inside you, I think you can understand. It's just part of you. So I was an instructional coach, and now I'm an independent consultant. I've written a few things, some blog posts. I've co-written, co-authored some books on project-based learning, but also anything that we talk about learner-centered, that's where I'm at. Something that's really enhanced and challenged me and made me grow has been technology integration. And as we're talking about now, we're talking about AI. That's really made a big change for me as well. So our outcomes, we're going to review the basics of AI for those who might be watching, including in education use cases and associated risk and responsibilities. We're also going to talk about how we can use AI to foster creativity. Part of that is this is going to be a really practical session. You know, we can go into a lot of theory, but we're going to see how, like what you said before, my friend, Maureen, where you said I needed to be able to use it. And so I love the fact Katie, you were here last week, and Maureen, you were here last week, that you brought some collective wisdom that helped grow this. So I really appreciate that about this cozy group. And then we're going to highlight at the end, hopefully I'm going to push forward that some prompt engineering and some prompt writing and some prompt creativity. And then we're going to explore practical AI tools for humanities. And like I said, that's pretty big. So I'm going to count on both of you to bring some of your knowledge here. And then we're going to craft AI prompts to inspire student expression. How can we leverage and allow students to grow in their creativity because of AI? Like last week, we're going to really focus on active participation. You're going to be posing questions. I'm not worried about this group. You were fantastic last week. That's why I couldn't wait to get on. I was hoping, oh, Katie, Maureen, I hope you're there. And voila, you were there. I love it. And open dialogue. I really love the dialogue in the chat last week, and both of you have been magnificent. You kind of helped each other out there. And that's what we're here for, right? To help each other out. And collaborative learning. This is a space for innovative practices, and resources. So honestly, the smartest person in the room is the Zoom room. So let's learn together. We don't have four walls, but we have this very flat 2D thing that says we're Zoom. That is the smartest part. Now, norms and etiquette, you two are very present, and you try things out and you share your ideas, and I know it says mute your microphone, but we're so cozy. And I feel like I'm talking to a blank wall when I don't hear your beautiful voices. So periodically, when I invite you in to unmute, please do so. Now, if possible, turn your camera on, but I do understand. Thank you, Katie, for having it on so I can see your beautiful smile. But I totally understand, Maureen, because the fact that you had dinner made for you, that allows you to not have your camera on. So here's our agenda, very similar to what we had last week, okay? I think I didn't even change that. I kept it the same because we're still focusing on humanities. As a disclaimer, the tools in this webinar may or may not be approved for use by your local Board of Education. So we're just demonstrating it. Like we said last week, I think, Katie, you were kind of tinkering with some other things besides ChatGPT. What were you tinkering with last week? And feel free, if you want to put it in the chat, that's fine too, or you can mute.
Yeah, so I'm still playing with Notebook LM, and also our board has paid for Gemini, so
Wow.
that's as opposed to ChatGPT. So I'm doing a lot of playing with that, and we also have Brisk in our board and School AI. So there's a lot of actual tools that our board is supporting to really dive into. And every time I open up one of them, it feels like there's something new that's just been added. So
I
that's
love it. Katie, that's wonderful. And feel free to share. But and I'm sure the one thing I'm noticing, Katie, that you probably notice is that you have to be kind of like learn the nuances between going from one to the other with the prompts, because what one prompt you create for one may not have the same output as when you put it in the other. So I always love hearing how other people, their perspectives on that. Let me ask you, Katie, are the students allowed to be on, is that something open for students or is just teachers?
So the rule seems to be that if you're 13 years or older, that they can be on certain things like ChatGPT, but that's on their own stead. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's if they're choosing to use it. But again, of course, that's also with whatever parameters the teacher has put into place. And then a couple of the tools, Brisk is starting to have a student piece, and as well, we're really playing a lot with chatbots in spaces and School AI. What I like about School AI is that it's a walled garden, so I'm not
Mm-hmm.
as worried about kids' data being mined and sold off.
Right.
So that's a nice sense of comfort. So that's the one I tend to recommend to teachers the most right now is School AI. Part of that is also because it's the one I'm more familiar with.
That's wonderful. Thank you again. And I bet you're the type of person who likes to challenge yourself and try something that just doesn't feel comfortable? Do you lean into that? You know,
Yeah, it's uncomfortable, especially when you're going back in and things have shifted and you're working with a new teacher. But
yep.
we're learning together.
That's awesome. And so Katie actually, no, not Katie. Maureen actually said she's going to reach out to you. So make sure, you connect with each other and you put your information there. So we're going to introduce generative AI for those who are watching the recording. And feel free to chime in, Katie, Maureen, because I know that when we talked about this last week, you had more experience, than you're not like a newbie with when it comes to this. Okay. So, here we go. Okay, I'm going to ask this question, but I already know the answer, but maybe it's even bit more this time. So where do you think you're at, Katie and Maureen, in terms of your experience with AI? And a 4 doesn't mean you're an expert. It just means I can teach someone maybe about Notebook LM, or I can teach someone about ChatGPT, but it doesn't mean that you don't have that growth mindset. I'm always assuming anyone who shows up to a webinar has a growth mindset because you're here, 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock your time, So where do you think you're at? 3.5 and a half. Oh, I love that. 3.5 and a half. So that 3.5 and a half is a 4. Is that right, Maureen? How about you, Katie? Where do you think? I'm predicting a 4, but last week you were kind of saying I'm not there yet. I'm still learning.
I would say I'm a fumbling 4, that I just keep going in and keep doing stuff. And like I said, we learn together.
I would rather have a fumbling 4 than like a sturdy 4. More like 3.75. Got it. Okay. Thanks for the clarification, Maureen. So I always say for myself, I might be like that fumbling 4, but I teeter between a 3 and a 4 and a 5. And it depends on the day. It depends on the program. It depends on the prompt. Every single time I look at it, I feel like just when I feel like I got it, something new comes along and I'm like, oh, I still have to get it. So, but I love that uneasy feeling because it makes me want to learn more. So, where does generative AI fit? It's been there for a while. When we think about reactive, we think about, a Google map. Sometimes you might even think about like a calculator. Whatever comes in, comes out and doesn't have a memory for it. When we think about predictive, it analyzes the data. So, no one in my family wants me watching on their Netflix account, because if not, they will see only Hallmark specials. That's it. And so it analyzes it. I hear it because all of a sudden I hear, Mom, you watched my account again. But it actually it predicts it. And so think about when you're typing along and all of a sudden predictive AI, it kind of starts guessing what you're going to have in your text, and so it might in a light colored text say, this is what you're writing, and you're like, yeah, that's what I'm writing. I didn't read my mind because it was predictive. Now, generative AI, it creates new content, like ChatGPT, and we know that, we have it creates new content and based on the data it's collected and also the data sets from multiple different iterations. So what's neat about that, it creates unique outputs that didn't exist before. Now, generative AI, it's a form of artificial intelligence. That word came around. A good friend of mine wrote a blog post in 2016 on AI. And when he wrote that blog post, it was AI and the workforce and learning. People, it was 2016 he wrote it. And what he wrote was pretty much what it is now. So it's creating content by learning patterns from large data sets. Now, like this, look at this. I've actually made a comparison. I've upped my ante from my last week's vision. When I think about a chef, I sat down, I was thinking about this. The ingredients, when we think about a chef, they use raw ingredients. Well, they use data. AI uses data to produce content. The quality of the ingredients affects the dish, and then the quality of the data affects the final output as well. When a chef, they follow recipes to combine ingredients effectively. Okay, a new chef might follow it. How many of you have followed it really, like you've tried different recipes over the same thing, and finally, when you start making new recipes, you make the same dish. You pull from this recipe and this recipe and this recipe. Okay, that's how I kind of cook. I look at all the different recipes and pull it together. The same thing for AI. They use algorithms and model patterns to process data and generate results. So it's using all the different ingredients and things that it's done before to say, hey, this is how the pattern seems to follow, and I'll pull from this and I'll pull from that and I'll pull from that. Now it personalizes, the chef personalizes a dish to individual tastes, dietary needs, improves dishes over, and they'll taste test it, you know. That's why I can never eat what I cook, because I've already tasted it. I have to wait for the leftovers, because, and then when I eat it afterwards, I'm like, oh my, that cook was fantastic. Who was that person? It was me. The iteration for AI, they customize the content based on the user inputs, preferences, and context. And so that's where our prompting comes in a way, because we're going to put the context and the specifics of what we need and what our digital dietary needs are. The limitations are, for a chef, if they can only make a gourmet meal if they have quality ingredients. And if you're a new chef, you need more practice and experience so you can add more of the flavor and trust what you're putting in there. The limitations for AI is that, you know, it's limited by the data it's trained on. And then past patterns and models might impact the output. And we're going to see that with some of the restrictions. So that, I was thinking about that. If I were to make a table and just compare them, what would it be like? Another colleague of mine compares it to like I said last week, like a junior assistant, someone who's an eager beaver, knows maybe the content, but doesn't have the experience, and will take literally what the mentor says, okay, and I'll do it, and I'll do it, and produces it, and needs feedback from the mentor. Now, what I mentioned about the risks is that what we've seen before, and we tell our educators, you need to be careful, because like you mentioned, Katie, you know, you like certain, like school AI, because of the fact that it's not, the information is not being mined for student information. You know, all right, once you put data out there, it's really out there. And so you need to protect it, especially for our students. And then the bias for some of them. And I know last week, Katie, you mentioned how you were surprised how one thing that you put in with one platform ended up with something a little different and was not as biased as what you've seen before. And so that's what we talked about. Like maybe depending on whether it's Gemini, whether it is ChatGPT, depending on what the input has been into it, will determine like the bias and the cultural biases that can be produced in the output. And then part of that balance is a responsibility in student information and the guarding against bias in AI. We can do as much as we can to make sure it's fair and accurate with our prompting. But the other pieces is that, you know, and this is where I always talk about it, this is where the human component is, and this is where the role of the teacher is. You know, we have, as educators, we have a responsibility to critically assess AI generated outputs and really ensure that they're accurate and fair and inclusive. And we need to teach our students that, you know, critical thinking is more important than ever now. And so that is our responsibility as educators, especially for our learners. Again, I like this little piece. First of all, the teacher looks so excited about technology, and the kids look so happy. Look at them, and they're diverse. So we're going to explore how generative AI is being used in education. Now, educators are already leveraging AI to generate materials like quizzes and writing prompts and even entire lesson plans. And I know, Katie, last week you were saying about that, your new teachers, to take that load off for them so they can really focus on the teaching. That's wonderful. And I think that's a great way of dealing with sub-plans. Remember how we used to come in sick because it was worse coming up with the plans than it was to stay home. Or that go to school sick. So I really love how that is used for that. And I really like the fact that new teachers are being taught that. But it's AI is also being used for personalized learning experiences, to really tailor to each student's needs. Beyond that, let's think about how it supports creative projects, like helping students develop stories or create digital art. The possibilities are broad and growing. Every time I look at a new blog post, I don't know about you, Katie Maureen, but if I read the latest blog post, it's something new. And for a while, I almost had to take a little break because when AI started going at full ramp, it was like daily something new, that was hitting. And so now I feel like it's kind of leveling off so I can breathe and take it in, but it's still growing. It's still growing, but not at the rate that it was like zooming before. So I think we might have a little breather, but not much. Okay. So our responsibility is, how can we use this technology and really leverage its value? Leverage its value. I agree with you, Maureen. It's so quickly we have to take breaks as needed. Absolutely. We have to take breaks, Oh, poison mushrooms. Katie. You got that one. I love your sense of humor. You're keeping me going at 7 o'clock at night. I love it. So I'm just going to offer this to you. I know I asked this question last week, but because of AI is always changing, you might have found a new tool. Have you used any AI tools in your classroom or for your work? If so, I want you to share your experiences. If not, what type of AI generated content will you find most useful? Now, Katie, you've been experimenting with a broad range. Is there something that you're like saying, I wish I had something else, or AI would do this? Because I bet a magic wand, it might show up. You never know.
I haven't felt that yet. It's more the fear of some of the stuff that is coming that I don't want to see come. Because I keep hearing that these AI agents that kids or adults can deploy to do tasks for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know a ton about it, but what I've heard definitely makes me worry,
Mm-hmm.
because the other experiences that I've had have been very, very positive. And I think it'll be interesting too when things go even further, because right now, some of the music stuff that I've played around with that'll
Mm-hmm.
generate music is really not good right now. But I know just based on the rate I've seen other things change, that
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that's going to improve. Right now, it just the AI music I've heard produced is not music I'd ever listen to or hold up as being like amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of new things making its way, new platforms that are even challenging what we already know with Gemini and ChatGPT and all that. So, the way I see it, and maybe, Maureen, you can chime in because you wrote down this, AI is changing so quickly, is to take one step at a time and to breathe when you need to, because, there's a lot going on right now. And so we just want to make sure that, we take care of ourselves, like mentally, emotionally, just to make sure. So when we have to make a decision regarding technology, we can make it in a place where it is logical and sound versus highly emotional. And I've seen that as I've worked with teachers, just take a breath and let's look at this, because if not, they're going to look at technology either asset based or fear based. And we have to, I'd like to see it as an asset with some underlying responsibilities about the risks, you know. So let's talk about prompt engineering. Why prompting skills matter, like we just said, there's a flood of new applications. I found that picture. I'm like, oh, I wanted a happy picture of a flood, not like devastation. And then output quality depends on the input. Great prompts lead to great results. We call it the power of the prompt. Prompting saves time and reduces error in your work. So what I love about it is the critical thinking the teacher goes through, you know, or the person who's creating the prompt. it's actually causing us to be a little bit more creative. It's actually causing us to think about the audience, you know. Oh, perfect. So these are the things I want you to think about as we're moving forward, you know. Um, why prompting will be valuable for you versus just having some other technology tool created for you. Now, context is key. Provide as much relevant context as possible. Include limits or constraints to really refine the output and be specific. Now, sometimes, like we saw last week, I gave you the bare bones of prompting because we knew, depending on what you were looking for, what really I look for is what you do after that first output. Do you evaluate it? Do you look at it? Is it meeting your needs? And what kinds of questions and feedback are you giving ChatGPT or Gemini to get it to your desired format, length, audience, tone, and goals? So I like to push it that way because I think it's important because it creates critical thinkers of our own teachers. And we want them to experience that so they can have that for our students. Iterate for success. Oh, please don't settle for the first output. Have you ever settled for the first output? Please tell me no, no, no. Have you, Katie? Have you just settled for the first output?
Only on recipes.
Only on recipes, yes. It depends on the context, yes. Don't settle for the first output. Well, actually, you could if you did an awesome prompt and you want to evaluate it, but at least evaluate it. Keep refining your prompt until you achieve the desired response. Experiment with different approaches to improve results, and always review the AI generated content to ensure oh, I love it, Maureen. You're always refining. You're that refining lady. I love it. Aligning with standards and appropriateness for your students. So you want it to align for the appropriateness of your audience. That's why I love it. I have such a growth mindset group here. We're groupies. We're growth mindset groupies. I love it. Now, teachers excel at crafting clear and purposeful instructions. I think that's part of who we are because we generate. Did you know that teachers generate over 400 questions a day? 400 questions a day. Maybe a third of it is procedural questions, but we're always we're asked that many questions and we ask that many questions. So we're good question askers, so that provides clarity, curiosity, and creativity. And I truly believe teachers are like that and they have the capacity to do that because we are designers of lessons. We are leaders and facilitators of our students. And then here's the thing. It only, like a good chef, it improves with time. Or fine wine improves with time too. So we improve with time, and so will our prompting if we have practice with it. Building prompting. Clear prompts yield precise responses. Start small and experiment with different tools. Like Katie, you're like inspiring me every time I'm playing with this, I'm playing with that. I love it. It's like your own makerspace of AI tools. Use your existing strengths as an educator. Design prompts with a teaching mindset. People think that AI will replace teachers. No, 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 no. We need that teaching mindset. AI can't do that. I've tried to, I've had great conversations with AI, but it's not going to replace me or you or you. Transform how you interact with AI by cultivating this essential skill. So treat it as that junior partner. How many of you said please and thank you to AI? By just saying please or thank you, you create, you start thinking as a thought partner versus as a tool. And so your prompting actually changes based on that. It has a mindset of, okay, you're a junior partner or you're a chef and I have to give you some information. It has to be refined. So I want to talk about something we mentioned last week, the prompt engineering, the RTF approach. And this is where I'm sure you've done this. I think, Katie, last week you mentioned a little bit of like, as a, learning. Like I said, I love the humor. Role, task, and format. When you have a role, this defines the persona or viewpoint that AI should adopt. By specifying a role, you set the tone and perspective for the response. Now, the task is the exact action the AI must take or the goal it must achieve. The more you detail that task, you direct the AI's focus. So all of a sudden, it's not all over the place. It's not looking at all the different recipes. It's like, I have to make this and the scope of its response. Now, the format, this outlines how the final answer should be structured or delivered. By providing a format, you ensure consistency and clarity in the AI's output. So by doing this, you're affecting the output and you're making it more relevant. Awesome. And so one thing I wanted to share with you, this is the role. You are a storyteller who creates, I'm going to pull this up for you, and I'm going to find that and put it in the chat. Let me see if I can put that in chat. Yeah, no, I should have copied that. I'll just put it here. Okay. So let me put this in the chat. It's not going to be bit.ly, not cute, but I'm just going to put it in here. So you'll see the output that it had. Okay. So I put in the role, and this is from ChatGPT. So it'll be interesting, Katie, if you're trying different platforms, what it might look like and how you might modify it. Remember what I said. You are a storyteller who creates Reader's Theater's play for elementary students. Suggest a 20-minute Reader's Theater's play based on a conversation between Jack and the Giant in the story Jack and the Beanstalk. Write the script for the two characters using the appropriate fourth grade language. Okay. So I'll give you a copy of that slide afterwards so you can see it. But that is one way. So if you saw that, let me pull up there. Here, you will see that this is what it came out with. And it'll be interesting because this is based on, ChatGPT is getting to know my voice and some of the data sets I've put in. It'd be interesting to see what comes out on your end, based on the data and the patterns it's recognized as you. So I wanted to point that out. So that's why I wanted to share my output this time. So you had some comparison, because this is exactly what I just copied and pasted. For some reason, ChatGPT was not letting me share my link. So I thought, oh, I'll just copy and make sure. Okay. I'm going to move forward, but you can still play around with those things. This is what I shared last week, because RTF is one way, but a good prompt might have the goals in a clarifying, so it understands instructions on how to do it, details of the like almost the format, in a way for you to evaluate that. And so here's an example where you could use a table. And one thing that I've done with teachers is that I will actually create this table before they even create a prompt. And this is like the neat version of it, but I've just taken a table and I'll say, you know what? Take a pencil and just, what is really your goal? Just write it down. Like they bullet point it. What do you want them to understand? They'll write it down. So they get that messy thought in there. And sometimes it's good to do the pen and paper thing first, because they can have in their notebook, they have their guide. And then when they're ready, they can formulate their prompt. And so if I go back, I'm sharing my screen here on this. Okay. I'm sharing these slides with you. This is what, and I'll put this link in there in the chat. Thanks, Katie. That's interesting. That's the one thing I did notice with ChatGPT. Katie put down that that's super interesting. She put the prompt for the Reader's Theater into Gemini, and it was around the same length. And she's been a drama teacher for 15 years, so no way that script is 20 minutes long. I find that's where the teacher judgment comes in place, because if you say an hour-long lesson, I'm like, there's no way this is all going to fit in an hour, you know? So I found sometimes I'll have to say, if I expect it to be an hour, I actually put 30 minutes. And so I can get some output, but I figure I can chop it down a little bit more. But this is what, from this prompt for developing a classroom resource to help middle school students critically analyze primary source documents on the civil rights movement. I could look at this and say, you know what, I will want to add a little bit more on this, but this is a starting point for me. Okay. And I think that's where we can always approach teachers or us as teachers or educators saying, if anything, AI is giving me a starting point. It's taking off some of that early surface thinking. And so I can go deep and personalize it for my students. Wouldn't you agree? I feel like that's something, it inspires me, like especially with some of the thoughts that it comes out with. It gives me a starting point. Now, when we create images, and I've been playing around with images, I just keep it with ChatGPT. I've been playing around with some other things, but I like to start with the core idea. Start with the clear central theme that you want when you create an image. Layer with details. Once you have, okay, I'm going to make, I want a scene or like like a meadow. So that's the scene. That's the big picture of this. Then I can layer the details. I can add descriptive elements like the setting and mood and style. Now you're going to adapt the language. You're going to vary between simple phrases and detailed sentences, depending on what you need. Artistry, the lighting, the perspective. Sometimes I even actually have to say, I do not want it to be, I want it to look realistic, not cartoon-like. Because sometimes I put some things in there and all of a sudden it looks like a cartoon, an animated cartoon versus what I really wanted, a more realistic view. And then you view your work for ways to improve and you fine tune it. You make adjustments based on the feedback or new ideas. And then, you actually have to think about, does your vision that what you have, does it meet your vision of what you intended it to be in terms of the intent and creativity? So let's talk about this intersection. Remember, humanities, huge, huge piece. So we want to go past that and think about that. The three buckets that we're going to focus on is using AI for generating story ideas, AI for digital storytelling, and artistic images. Now, we got a taste of that with the last two prompts with the Jack and the Beanstalk, the Great Debate, and the Primary Source Analysis Guide. Okay, so let's go a little further and see what we have here. First of all, I'm going to ask you again, what are your go-to AI tools to support you in humanities subjects? I know you shared last week, but did you learn any new ones this week? I'm going to throw a couple out here. The same ones I did last time. But I'm actually, between now and next week, my goal is to add 3 more on the slide. So watch out, Katie and Maureen. Something to look forward to. Because I think what I want to look at is more of the creativity piece. So these are ones, and I'm going to challenge you, maybe try one this week, and see how it is. See how it fits in what you do. Like Voyant is a web-based, text analysis tool that allows, you take a URL and you put it in and it starts analyzes the data, and it can make it on word frequency, trends, correlations. It actually, I've seen some really cool things on it. Let's see. And slides, anything that can make a slide for me, I'm for it. The amount of things. Grammarly, I found interesting. Does anyone use Grammarly? Yeah, kind of. I found it interesting because I feel like when they added like more AI components to it, it almost got too convoluted for me because it was actually changing the tone of my voice, So I've actually used that maybe as a starter or after I final, but then I almost have to take it down a notch. So Magic School, a lot of teachers use that for lesson plans, and get some ideas. Have your teachers used Magic School? Have they? Yep, yep, that's awesome. So I'm going to keep moving on. So I would like you, my friends, to put this prompt, let me see. It's bit.ly prompt. Oh, let me see if I can get it out of here. If not, I'm just going to, where did it go? Oh, where did it go? It disappeared on me again. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Okay. This is the prompt. I think this is the prompt. Primary. This is, okay. I'm hitting the wrong things here. Let me move back. There we go. Prompt challenge 1. So I'm gonna, oh, here it is. Let me put it in the chat. Okay, Copilot, but that'll be interesting, Maureen. If Copilot's the official one, that will be really interesting to see like how some of these prompts show up. I'm always curious about that. So I created a slide. This is the different slides with the different prompts. So if you want to go ahead, that's fine too. It had what we had before. And what I did, my friends, is that as we go through some of these prompt challenges, if you go to the notes, you will see some notes from me. Okay. So if I let's look at the first one. This says, I am trying to find a creative prompt or creative project ideas for my blank students to demonstrate their understanding of whatever topic with digital stories. My students have diverse learning needs and interests, and I aim to help them deepen their knowledge of the content while offering options that cater to their strengths and interests. Ask me a series of targeted specific questions one at a time. That's a key word, one at a time. Did you try that, Katie, like I told you last week? Did it work for you?
I've used it before with travel planning stuff.
Oh,
And it's
wonderful.
been really great because it'll go back and ask me more specific things when like what sort of activities or what kind of food I like and that sort of thing. And it's great because there's always stuff that you don't think. But I do find the AI will sometimes get a little confused. So I just recraft the prompt and then put that in it. But yeah, it's certainly a huge tool to help me write better prompts.
Absolutely. I actually use that, before I write a blog post, because I don't want AI to do that. So I have AI ask me questions like, here's some of my thoughts and ideas, and this is the tone and voice that I would love. And by that time, I've created it on my own little chat, and so it knows my voice. Like it knows like I'm warm and friendly, not mean and horrible. So it knows that voice, but yet I love it asking me questions. And once it's done that, I don't ask for it to write everything out. I just ask me the questions and um give me a quick synopsis of like pretty much I would say 5 sentences, and then from there I write the whole blog post, and it's mine, but I get inspired by ChatGPT or whatever I'm using. So this is one way you could do that. I like this, especially for new teachers, because it's almost like this mentor, this person giving them ideas, and helping them think. And I think part of it, and I'm just saying this because both of you work with new teachers, is that we need to give our new teachers a chance we need to teach them how to think through their ideas for lessons and ideas like that. But lots of teachers are so busy that you could create a prompt that will help teachers, new teachers, go through this process. Okay. So anyone try this? Absolutely. Thanks, Maureen. And I did it so you can copy instead of trying to type it all out. I put in what I actually used, what output for me, so you can compare it. You know, I know everyone has a different sometimes it comes out differently, like with Gemini or some of the other platforms. And so this is one. And the other piece, I'm just going to go through this. I know you'll be playing around with it. Oh, it doesn't allow you to cut and paste. You should allow you to copy. Let me see, make sure you can view. Yeah, it should allow you to copy it. Click, Maureen, click on the link inside and you should be able to copy that. Because of the view piece, you should be able to do it. Are you not able to do it? Oh, I mean from the chat. You should be able to click on it. It doesn't let you do that because it's a hyperlink. Well, let me see if I can put the full thing in for you, okay? Let me do that. Okay, perfect. But here it is just in case. I already put it in there. So the second prompt is the role, task, and format. And really you can fiddle this like the task, design a series of lessons on that will help students examine the different perspectives of that event through engaging in creative learning. So I believe that, you know, the byproduct of creativity is critical thinking. They actually go hand in hand. So when you can create those moments where they are looking at an historical event or a story through the lens of different people or characters, I think that's very powerful. I'm challenge you with something, Miss Katie. Here's the challenge. Come up with a prompt for next week where, and I hope you're there next week, where it is a character, because I've been playing around with this, but it still hasn't been perfect. A character, AI takes the role of a character and you're another character and you're having a conversation with AI, like as that character. I'm almost there. I almost got that prompt down, but then it'll be interesting. And I don't do it on ChatGPT. Try it on another one, and I'll try it on ChatGPT, and we'll see what we'll come up with. Okay.
You did that.
You already did that? Okay. Oh
Yeah,
my.
School AI is amazing because you can create your own
Which one?
chatbots.
Is it
Yeah,
school AI?
yeah, you can create your own chatbots, and they already have a whole bunch of really good models to interact with too, with
Mm.
historical figures. So,
Do you have the prompt for like ChatGPT or Gemini? Can you use that same prompt?
I would think so.
I
I
want you to
think,
try it because like so
yeah,
not everyone has school AI, but
no,
people their basic where most people start is ChatGPT or Gemini. That's where they start.
challenge accepted.
I know you're gonna do it. So I can't wait to see your lovely face next week. But because like I try to go with like where most people start out with, you know, and I found a lot of people start with Gemini because very Google oriented, and then the Chat GPT because it was one of the first ones, you know. And then but I hear more and more of different ones, and so it's kind of interesting. But I want to make sure that at least we have some I want to see how it shows up in Chat GPT. Okay. I love it. I love this challenge that we're face off. Woo, I love it. Okay. Now this one is a little interesting. Again, ChatGPT was a little wonky with me. It wasn't allowing me to share my thread. So I just did a screencastify. So if you go to the last piece, we're talking about generating artistic images. And this is with Dolly, and I don't, you know, I did that because of the fact that it was associated with ChatGPT. There's other platforms out there, and you'll have to, and what I found is what I said with that whole clarify thing. It's really making it clear, and I find with the images, I have to be almost like very literal about location of where things need to be and have an idea of like whether it's going to be off in the distance, in front, you know, I almost have to be so sequential in how I lay it out for it to come out. So see how it shows up in your platforms, because you'll see what it showed up on mine. And it'll be interesting to see. And so I like using these generating artistic images because of the simple fact that it's, I find it almost even better than finding like stock images. Now I know Canva has it with their AI, their magic AI, where it actually will modify. You can start out with an image and then it will make the needed changes. But even then with Canva, when you have to write down specifically what you want, I find that I'm being even more, either I have to be super specific or I have to pull back and go broad. I don't know about you. Katie, Maureen, have you ever played around with the images and what it comes out with? Oh, wonderful, Maureen. I'm glad you have that. Canva for EDU. EDU has all the bells and whistles of a premium. I love that. But yeah, I with the images, I always have to look at it, and you have to be careful. You don't want to take stock images that are already like copyrighted and trying to modify those. You have to really look at the licensing behind that. And I say that because people get in trouble, huge trouble, if they play around with things that are copyrighted. So hope you get to play around with those and let me know. We have a challenge going on with Katie, and I love that. Can't wait to see Katie next week. Maureen, I hope I see you because I just want to hear what your husband's going to cook for you again. So, we're ending on time. Oops, let me turn this off. I don't know why I keep getting these phone calls. I should turn that off. Apologize. Any questions? Any questions? I trust that you played around with it and we did share a little bit more about it, but is there anything that you want to highlight, Katie or Maureen, with the prompts that you played with?
I only got through one, but that was because it asked me a bunch of questions,
Yes.
and I love it. Like the questions that it particular, because like I said, I've used questions for travel stuff. I haven't used it for education, and it
Yeah.
really helped me narrow down a lot of things. I had to tell, like it was really trying to get me to pick a certain thing, and I kept saying for a couple of the answers that I want students to have a lot of choice, and it still went with that, which is great. I wish I had added a component asking for a rubric too, because
Yep.
that would have been good.
Yep. And that is what I love using it for that, saying I'd like at the end, after, and this is what you say, after gathering all the information that you need, so it stops asking the questions. Please, create a draft that I'll evaluate and give you my input. So that I love. And if you're both presenting with doing a presentation, I use this format of it asking me questions to help me think through, because sometimes you have these big ideas already, but you don't have any considerations. So one of the things I do is I will include, if you're familiar with the Duarte presentation model, Nancy Duarte, she does the whole thing on Slideology. It's Duarte. So when you're saying I'm preparing a presentation and please help me, please help me number, or instead of saying I'll ask first for an outline, but sometimes I'll ask directly for provide me text for the slide, suggested images, and slide notes for the presenter notes based on Nancy Duarte's philosophy of presentations. When you give it something to sort of go off on, it produces beautiful work. So if you say for a rubric based on, or a formative based on, think of McTighe, if you think of his or Dylan Williams, like what their ideas of formative assessment, some of the big gurus, and pull out a title and just say, based on so-and-so's book on formative assessment. I usually like to put two very similar ones that kind of like are a mashup of who I am. Create that. And it does amazing. So think about that. Like for travel, based on Rick Steves' philosophy of travel, come up with an itinerary for me. So give it a recipe to go off of first. And then after that, it will help out. That's my big thing when it comes to the questions and developing a rubric. Okay, I know. And his audio tours are fantastic, Maureen. I love it. Okay, friends, this was lovely. Our closing reflection. Just put in the chat one thing you could do to support creativity in your classroom, and then we'll call it a day. I'm 1 minute over. Now I'm going to stop sharing and find my screen here. Absolutely. Remember, use AI to inspire. And if you can, I know I have one teacher who actually, the kids aren't using it per se because they're not of age, but the teacher uses it and uses it as a thinking model and uses that like, okay, what should I put down? What are some things? So it's a real think aloud, and the kids actually work in teams to create a prompt. They work in good night, Maureen, and they work in teams to create a prompt, and then they put it, and he chooses the best one or the one, and they try all the prompts. So that's one way. I'm going to stop recording. Thank you so much. I'm going to